So, let's talk about a story you might have seen making the rounds online. It's a pretty wild one, actually. It weaves this narrative about a hidden truth behind one of the world's most sacred places, linking it to a totally different faith through an epic tale of divine sacrifice and ancient prophecy. It's exactly the kind of story that just explodes in the digital age, you know? It taps right into that search for hidden histories and deeper connections. And the central question this whole story asks is, well, it's a big one. It's asking if the sacred black stone inside Mecca's Kaaba, the absolute center of Islamic pilgrimage, could actually be an ancient Shiva lingam, a sacred symbol of the Hindu deity, Lord Shiva. Okay, so before we go any further, it's really important to frame what we're doing here. This is an explainer. We're unpacking the details of a popular online religious story, or what's known in some traditions as a katha. Our job here is just to lay out the narrative as it's told. We're not here to prove or disprove it, just to understand the story itself. All right, so where does this story even begin? Well, it takes us way back to a mythical, distant golden age called the Treta Yuga. According to this narrative, this was a time long before ours, when the world was spiritually pure and the divine was just a part of everyday life. And in this golden age, the story is all about a holy city in the Arabian desert. But it wasn't called Mecca, it was called Makeshwar. And that name, the story says, means gateway to salvation. At the very heart of this city was this incredibly powerful, self-manifested Shiva lingam, a sacred stone that just appeared on its own, radiating divine energy. So what was life actually like in this city? The story paints this incredible picture. It claims the people spoke Sanskrit. They were devoted to Lord Shiva, but they had a special name for him, Alak Niranjan, which means the unknowable or the formless one. Their whole lives were built around Vedic-style worship, and they even had a practice of 5 daily prayers, all centered on a brilliant temple that housed that sacred lingam. And get this, the story says the city was so holy, so pure, that Lord Shiva and his wife, goddess Parvati, actually came down from the Himalayas to visit in person. They supposedly walked among the people, gave them their blessings, and just filled the whole city with their divine energy. But you know how these stories go? No golden age lasts forever. A change was coming. The narrative describes how that era of light, the Treta Yuga, started to fade, making way for the confusion and darkness of the Kali Yuga, which is the age we're supposedly in right now. And the trouble didn't come from the outside. Not at first. It started from within. The story says the people of Makeshwar, even their priests, slowly got corrupted by things like greed and ignorance. That spiritual light of the city began to go out as they started to forget what their worship was really about. And with that spiritual weakness, the city became a target. A power-hungry king heard stories about the lingam and its incredible energy. He thought, if I can get that stone, I can conquer the world. And so he launched a vicious attack on the holy city. Okay, so this is a really key part of the narrative. This is where the story tries to connect the ancient past to the present. It claims that over time, the old words and rituals were corrupted. As you can see here, the name Alak Niranjan, the unknowable, is said to have morphed into Allah. And those 5 daily Vedic prayers, the pujas, are presented as the origin of the 5 daily Islamic prayers, the namaz. As the king's army is breaking through, the story says Lord Shiva himself appears. But when the king tries to capture him, Shiva just smiles and says this. He basically hints that all of this whole invasion, it's all part of a much bigger divine plan. And then, in a flash, something incredible happens. As the king reaches for him, Shiva's body just dissolves and merges right into the sacred lingam. In an instant, that radiant stone turns completely black, becoming the stone that the story claims is the very one we see in the Kaaba today. So you see, the point the story is making here is that this wasn't a defeat, not at all. It was a choice. It was a deliberate sacrifice, all for a specific purpose that would unfold in the dark age to come. Now that his essence was locked inside the stone, the narrative says a voice started to speak from it, talking directly to the few devotees who were still pure of heart. And that voice laid out a huge prophecy. It explained that in this coming dark age, the truth, or dharma, would be hidden. But his imprisonment wasn't a tragedy. It was a sacrifice to actually save the world. He said people would forget his real name and call him by others, but his power would always remain inside that stone. The prophecy went even deeper, outlining 4 major crises that would define this dark age. the Kali Yuga. First, a crisis of ignorance, where people just forget the truth. Second, a crisis of war, where people actually fight each other over different names for the same god. Then a crisis of nature's wrath. And finally, a crisis of the soul, as humanity tries to live without any spiritual connection at all.
So, with the truth now hidden inside this stone, the story says that over the centuries, only a handful of special people, these keepers of the secret, understood the stone's real identity. And the narrative really focuses on three key figures who kept the secret alive. First, goddess Parvati herself. Then, early on, a tribal chief named Suryavanshi. And much, much later, the famous Hindu sage and philosopher Adi Shankara. And the story of Suryavanshi, wow, it's a really tragic one. He was a true believer who got a vision from Shiva and tried to perform a huge ritual to set him free. But the king's army found out. Suryavanshi died trying to protect the stone, and the story says his spirit is still there, guarding it to this day.
Then, fast forward a few centuries, the narrative brings in another huge figure. It says the great sage Adi Shankara traveled to the city, and with his deep spiritual insight, he instantly saw the stone for what it was, Lord Shiva. The story claims he performed secret Vedic rituals there to reawaken its sacred energy. And all of this leads to the story's big payoff, the claim that modern-day rituals at Mecca are actually echoes of these ancient practices. The narrative draws these direct lines, as you can see. The tawaf, which is walking around the Kaaba, is reframed as the ancient Hindu practice of walking around a lingam. Touching or kissing the black stone is seen as a memory of touching a lingam to receive blessings. It even connects the 7 laps of the tawaf to the symbolism of Shiva's cosmic dance. So that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the Katha's powerful conclusion. After going through the past and reinterpreting the present, it makes one last, dramatic prediction about the future. That voice from the stone said that this whole long, dark age of forgetting will finally come to an end when just one person, a true devotee with pure sight, arrives. The moment that person looks at the black stone and truly sees it as the Shiva lingam of Makeshwar, the story says the illusion will shatter and the original truth will be revealed to everyone. And that's where the story leaves us, with that big, hanging question. It's a narrative that kind of sidesteps all conventional history, and it asks you to see a hidden connection where most people just see division. So whether you see it as a sacred prophecy or a piece of modern mythology, it leaves you wondering, will the truth of Makeshwar, as this story tells it, one day be revealed?